you need something greater than yourself
Right.
to undertake.
To believe in, right?
To
Yeah.
believe in,
Yeah.
yeah. To undertake a process like that, to go in and dive in and take somebody else's children and raise them as your own, take them into your family. Hello, and welcome to the Rise Again podcast. My name is Dr. Peterkraisanen, and I'm your host here at the Rise Again podcast. Now, we're on to season 2, and the thing about season 2 that's going to differentiate it from season 1 are the things that I've gone through in my life since we were doing season 1. We have recently fostered and adopted a newborn. I killed my first bull elk with my bow and arrow last fall, and I've gotten into fly fishing, as well as am now the medical director of a men's health and testosterone replacement business. This has all been majorly life-changing for me, and I'm super excited to share some of the journey with you guys through the Rise Again podcast. So I hope you guys get something out of this. If you guys love it, please rate it and review it, share it with your friends. Let's get the stuff out there. We're going to share some amazing guests, and I hope you guys really enjoy season 2 of the Rise Again podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the Rise Again podcast. This is episode 68, and today I'm sitting down with my good friend and fellow podcaster, Johnny Redman. Johnny is a great friend of mine, and what we've been able to do over this past couple years is really connect on a lot of things. And while I was on my hiatus from podcasting, Johnny and I have gotten to know each other pretty well and have visited about a lot of things. We've shared a lot of sauna time together and cold plunges, and really just enjoyed getting to know each other and being able to connect on a lot of the really important things in life to both of us. So no one better to interview me about what's gone on over the past year and a half and these important times in my life than John Redman himself. We're going to get into what the trajectory of the podcast is, what the changes are. I've undergone some significant changes with my private practice and really have just loved where I'm at right now and what I'm doing. So I want to share some of that and some of the cool experiences I've had over the past year. You guys are really going to enjoy it. So let's get into today's episode 68 with John Redman and myself talking about the Rise Again podcast, what's new, what's upcoming, and what's happened over the past year. Thanks so much. I really hope you guys take something away from today's episode and you learn where we're going to take things in the future. Of course, if you guys have great podcast guests for me on any of these topics and things that I'd like to visit about that I bring up today in the episode, reach out to me. My email's in the show notes, peterkraisanen@gmail.com. Send me that stuff and let's just connect. I hope you guys have a great day and I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Thanks so much.
Out of New River, Arizona, we're looking out west to the sunset and it's looking nice. We got Peterkraisanen and Johnny Redman.
Well, it's super sweet to be here. I think, when I wanted to kind of kick things back off with the Rise Again podcast, I was like, man, I need to get a good solid interview, kind of a little back and forth action. And who better to do it than my good man and friend, Johnny Redman. Here we are.
We are doing it live.
We're both kind of getting, I'm actually over my cold and you kind of got one right now.
I got a little gravel going on. So for those of you who have never heard my voice before, you think it's normal, but little gravel coming at you.
You think it's sexy now. Man,
yes.
you just...
It's starting to heat up in here. Yes, sir.
Oh, man.
Well, cool. Yeah, Peter. So we're kicking this off talking about the relaunch of the Rise Again podcast. I've been following your podcast for at least a year. I did a number of episodes, a lot of cool people you interviewed, a lot of interesting conversation. Then you took a little bit of a break, and then now
Indeed.
You're doing a relaunch, and then some things have changed here in the interim as well. And I think we're going to talk about those things.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you for bringing all that up. Exactly. There was a period of time there after we got, it was 66 episodes in, and, it was just, I was really busy with things. Actually, with LifeDoc, my practice, I was deciding what was going to be happening with that. I was actually going to be making some moves, and I wasn't exactly sure what they were.
Mm-hmm.
I was busy with the podcast and had some other just personal stuff going on. And at the same time, I was like, you know what? I just need to reassess where I'm at in life right now. And if it's not a necessity, it needs to be put on hold. And as much as I love the podcast and look forward to it every week, I was like, it's just going to sit on the back burner for a bit. And I'll pick it back up if it's meant to be. And it's meant to be. Yeah. And so with LifeDoc, I ended up transitioning out of that. I am the medical director for a men's health business called Men's Revival. So I use all of my training to treat men as completely and comprehensively as possible. while really kind of taking the emphasis and getting guys to feel good first and then make changes instead of my old practice, which was like, make all these changes for 6 to 12 months and then you'll start maybe feeling good. Now it's like, get you feeling good. And then it's like, okay, doc, what can I do? Like, how can what changes should I start be making?
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about Men's Revival.
Essentially, it was all it all happened. I think everything happens for a reason and happened right in the right times. It was right in the time COVID was happening. Life Doc was doing well. We had gone all virtual because no one wanted to come in and whatever else. So anyways, we're working from home. But I just was like, you know what? I wanted to do something different. And I didn't see myself growing a huge practice. I couldn't even comprehend it really.
Yeah.
So I wanted to grow and I wanted to be more excited about the future than I was about the past. Right. So I'm looking for something better. Well, I had met someone at a business networking meeting. Her name is Megan.
Mm-hmm.
She had an IV, a mobile IV business, and her husband were looking for referral partners, whatever. Anyways, we ended up meeting 5 months later. Fast forward, after our great meeting that we had at my office, she approached me and said, hey, got a great idea. Just wanted to run it by you. She was like, hey, me and my husband are wondering if you could sit down for a meeting. I was like, you know what? Sounds like a great idea. Let's just do it. Nothing to lose, right?
Yeah.
And I did have my hands up in the air at this time. Like, what's going to happen? Like, do I switch over to doing something different? Like, I really wanted some change. And, you're a brother from another mother. You understand that.
ENFPs, we like change.
We like change. Yeah. Personality type, ENFP.
Correct. Yeah.
So anyway, with that, I was like, hey, this seemed good. So anyways, I contract worked for them for a little while, designed the business that we have. It's all virtual. It's for men in Arizona. It's hormone replacement. It's optimization. We use supplements. We use customized strategies. We've got vitamin and mineral stuff, injections, et cetera, injectable testosterone replacement, essentially optimizing guys' hormones. And I think what really will sound like, it'll actually make sense to people is like, okay, when guys get a little older, they start putting on weight around the midsection.
Yep.
They start slowing
squishy,
down.
A little soft.
That's right. Start slowing down, right? Not able to keep up with the kids.
Yep.
Maybe not playing sports like they used to. And
lower energy, little
doughy. Sex drive isn't not where it used to
be where it used to be.
To take a guy back years in life, I mean, it could even be decades. Like I could get a 50-year-old guy who's suboptimal in his testosterone levels and get him to feel like he's probably 30 years old again. Energy, recovering from workouts, putting on muscle. His drive is back in the bedroom. Wife's happy. He comes home from work and his honey-do list, that actually gets done. And the kids are excited to play with him and he's excited to play with the kids, right? Everyone's winning. It's relatively inexpensive to do something like this, but it is a monthly fee. There's no insurance involved and whatever, but they get concierge treatment. So I love it. We've been having a blast with it. It's totally changing the game for guys in Arizona.
So walk us through briefly, kind of, you get a new patient, he comes in, he's mentioning essentially the lower man card, my words. You're looking to increase performance in all aspects of life. Walk us through kind of what that process looks like. I assume you do assessment and then you prescribe a plan of sorts and get them feeling better. Yeah. What does that process look like? And then what sort of time frame can they expect?
They're looking online and they're looking around and pops up on Google, do you have low T? Guys are even searching low T. They're not even looking at like fatigue, low sex drive, whatever. They're looking at low testosterone and do I have the symptoms?
Right.
Versus most problems, people look up symptoms and then they go, oh, I have this problem.
Interesting.
But there's such a notoriety now and there's like Joe Rogan and guys are talking about testosterone, right? So they're like, do I have low T? But anyway, guys are looking it up. So anyways, they call our office. Somebody answers the phone, either Lincoln or Megan usually, or every once in a while you might get me that answers it. Yeah. But we get the phone call. We kind of screen people and just check in on their symptoms, whatever else. Essentially, if they're a male and they're excited to, get looking into things a little bit further, we give them a comprehensive, complementary laboratory evaluation.
Gotcha.
Which is done within usually, it can be done as soon as possible. It can be done within a few days where we have a phlebotomist comes out to their house, draws their blood. We get the results back within 24 to 48 hours. They have a free video visit with me talking about their health history, their goals, the problems they're having. At the end of the call, we've got usually either a solution. There's an option for them to get them back into the saddle again, or they're not a great candidate and they get referred out to somebody who I know, like, and trust.
Gotcha.
That's how it works. And then they're on with us. They get, essentially, it's a monthly subscription for them. usually between 150 and 290. Average price probably about 220 a month.
Right, per month, roughly. Yep.
And you know, I mean, guys are sometimes they'll talk, you know, like, oh, the 220, and I'm like, well, what would it be worth it to you if you had your life back?
To have energy, right? Exactly. If you can shave 20 years off your life, go back to what you felt like when you were 30. If you're
like,
50.
do you want to go play flag football again,
exactly.
or like, do you want? I mean, what do you want to go do? Do you want to go play sports and go do things and what would that mean for your marriage, you know? And so guys are like, oh yeah, that's true. That's just a drop in the bucket.
And then what does that look like? How long do you typically have a patient then?
So with testosterone replacement, there's a couple different plans that we have. And the one that we most frequently prescribe is testosterone replacement. It's something that you're on it indefinitely unless you want to come off it and go back to the testosterone levels you had before. So it is a replacement strategy. This isn't a strategy by which you're going to get your old youthful testosterone levels back being made by yourself. You're actually replacing what a healthy, vigorous young man would be making.
Right.
It's interesting. I was listening to a podcast today, and actually this Harvard MD, he actually kind of follows our treatment schedule that we have. I was kind of surprised to hear his regimen. And he said, 100 should be like the new 80. The idea is that keeping our youthfulness longer is more of a reality than it's ever been in human history, because we've got the ability to fine tune whatever it is that we're looking at to make life better for ourselves.
Right.
So, and especially in hormones, like his point was that, well, we weren't born for longevity.
No.
You reproduced by the time you were 14 and you had grandkids by the time you were in your late 20s. And
at that point, you're looking at death in the face. Yeah.
right. Or else stealing from your grandkids so that you can survive, So
exactly.
So he's like, well, we're not meant to live that long, but now that we are living as long as we are, I mean, our average age of our guys is probably about 45 years old, and they're dealing with suboptimal levels of testosterone and other hormones. And dealing with that, I mean, you fix that problem super fast. And they're feeling good, back in the saddle of life again. And you call them, follow-up calls are easy. They're like, Doc, doing great.
Yeah.
I'm feeling good.
These people then, well, if I understand it correctly, you're basically getting their T levels to a point where maybe, let's say, where they were at maybe when they were 30 or 25, and then they'll choose to stay on this program or this monthly thing for as long as they want to feel good.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if, they find somebody that treats them better, I always encourage them to go for it. Right.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, if you trust us and you like the way that I treat you, I encourage you to stick around. And if you find something else that's better, we give them such a good quality, we give them like quality time. It's like time to visit about life, whatever else is going on. They're really, it's kind of like a little therapy, if they want it to be, it could be even a little therapy session for them at the same time. So it works out to be great. So that's been fun. With that, around that time, we started talking about, I knew that the goal was to do, my wife and I have been wanting kiddos for a long time. And so we had been tossing around fostering and adopting and whatever, choosing one or the other. And around that time, we just decided, you know what, let's take the plunge. Like, let's do this.
And doing this is?
It was either one or the other. And so we didn't know at the time and which we were going to do, but we knew we had a protocol and a way to go about it. So we chose an agency in Arizona to work with, who gave us training on like fostering and adopting and what it was like, and parenting classes, and they do all this stuff, right?
Yep.
And then you get to choose, do you want to do fostering or adoption? You can't really you can get licensed and certified, so you can get licensed to foster and certified to adopt, but they really kind of only want you on one track or the other. Even though if you're fostering and then the child comes up for adoption, they're going to ask you first.
Yeah.
But they kind of want you pursuing one or the other. So we went through Child Crisis Arizona. I heard great things about them. It's kind of funny. I had heard about them actually when I was running an ultra marathon, a 50-kilometer race. And the lady next to me was a photographer. She runs ultras. She's just a stellar human being. It was such a fun visit. We ran together for like 12 miles. She ended up running like 100K after that and whatever else. She just like, and I was like, you just go for it. You know, that's just her attitude towards life. You could tell.
Get the most out of it. Yep.
Yeah. Like I'm rolling across the finish line beat up. Like I'm not going to be a perfect specimen, And even with the fostering and adopting, like, so they took in kids of their own. And so then anyways, when we were visiting prior to that run, I had actually decided with my wife that we weren't going to do fostering because it was going to be too emotionally draining, too much work. whatever else, just kind of like,
Yeah.
we don't need to. Why are we doing it? I finished that run, and after talking to Tara about it, had a complete like meltdown on the way home, just thinking about the kids that need help.
Yeah.
And so then we committed right there to doing it, called Child Crisis, got on that road and that path and that agency. I mean, that's almost another podcast. I just love that agency, and went through the classes and whatever. And
So Peter, if I could stop you, just to be clear here. So you're talking about the two options you were weighing were fostering and or just adopting, right?
Yes.
So adoption is you're not basically getting a trial run with the kid first, right? You are adopting the child.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's a private adoption. So through the state, it's a little different. They do actually have changed it now to give you 6 months before the adoption proceedings are complete.
Yeah.
It is kind of like a trial run now. And I don't know that they did that a while ago. I think they started doing it because they ran into some failures with it, their previous system.
They're right. And then so the option you ended up choosing was fostering.
We did, yeah. And we got certified to adopt, but we chose the fostering track because the only way you'll get an infant is that if you foster them and then their rights are severed to their parents, and then you can actually adopt them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, most ages of kids are going to be like pretty much like 3 on up.
Right.
And that's when all that, like the bonding and attachment and all those things.
Your goal was to get an infant.
Yeah.
But then you also knew and understood that fostering, there's no guarantees.
That's right. Yeah.
So then the risk is you get attached to an infant and then you no longer have the infant anymore.
That's right. Yeah. We knew we were rolling the dice. I mean, we said many prayers, but at the same time, it's like, I just believe that God knows what's best for us. And I was like, hey, whatever, if the trial in our life is to teach us some lessons, like we're just going to learn lessons.
Yeah. And what's funny is I know you and I were biking at the time, pedal biking in the morning, doing our, 40-mile cross country bike rides. And you were talking about fostering and or adopting. And you said, hey, I'm going the fostering route. And I, again, not being familiar with the process, I had heard, right? So there's no guarantee that you get to keep the child. So now you get emotionally attached, right? The mother wants the child back. You had explained that enough to me, and I was aware of it enough to know that, hey, there's a decent probability that would happen. But your attitude was, hey, no, Johnny, it's going to work out. Like it'll all just work out. It'll be just fine. And so I was just like, okay. Yeah, he says it's going to work out and it's going to be just fine. And so I won't go ahead and finish the story for you, but it's been really interesting to watch. So continue. Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, it brings me back to like, I absolutely, at some point you just kind of go in with like, you go in confident in your decision.
Yeah.
And you just kind of throw caution to the wind and you're like, you know what? I know the chances are very slim that you end up keeping an infant and that infant becomes adopted by you, et cetera. The state, to just give a little background, like they push really hard for kinship. So that's family relations. And they give the parents like oodles of chances, to like, so say it's abuse or say it's substance abuse or say it's trauma in the home, whatever it is, they give the family a lot of time to fix those and remedy those things. So the court gives orders, okay, you get the child back if you do X, Y, and Z. And rightfully so. I mean, if a parent can get their act together, everyone I know that loves kids knows that the child does best with the parent if the parent's taking care of themselves and can love on the child. Like that's no question. They don't do better with somebody else, even if they're going to say get a Harvard education, than the parents who, than the blue collar mom and dad who, maybe get into a little bit of mischief. Right. They're actually going to do better with their original parents. That's what the data ends up showing. So I understand the effort and the emphasis on reunification. That was always the goal, is to reunify the child with their biological family. What ended up happening for us is we got the call on the very, very last day of April, and we ended up picking up our little boy May 1st from the hospital in Mesa, Arizona. And it just ended up being the case that it was like kind of surreal from day one. So back in the day, I used to work in a NICU. And when I was in college, I loved the neonatal intensive care units. I think those small babies, so it brought back all these warm and fuzzy feelings from my favorite work that I ever had, which was the neonatal intensive care unit. And then going in there, finding out that, there was other adoptions already in this family and that there's a possibility that this child might be coming up for, who knows?
Right.
The situation's not like it's not looking as good as it could look for the biological family. Put it that way.
Right.
but they have a great opportunity, and we were all about it. I mean, we got into this to reunify for hopeful reunification. And that's a hard thing too. You get into fostering and you're like, you do have to want the child. You have to also desire
Right.
the best for the child,
Yeah.
not just
Right.
for us, you know? So anyway, it went months and months. He came home, he was on oxygen and he had high needs for a while. And he ended up weaning off that and seeing, we got all his, doctor's visits and stuff done. And he ended up just growing up this super healthy, he's just fast growing, just beautiful little boy with red hair and light skin. And it's so funny because he looks just like my wife with the red hair and the light skin.
Right.
And anyways, everything that has happened recently, his rights were severed to a biological family, and we did end up adopting him. I mean, talk about roller coasters of emotions.
Right.
I mean, you start with this kid that I didn't think we were going to be able to keep him in the beginning. This is the funny thing. Everyone around me guarded their heart more than I guarded mine. I mean, everyone who I talked to was like, so what are the chances that you guys get to adopt?
Exactly.
So like they wanted like a percentage and they like, and what was interesting is, I've even told my parents this, but my dad, it's so funny. Like I totally get it. And I love the man to death. He's so funny. He's like, it was so hard for him to want to get close to Onyx because he did not want to break his heart. He didn't want his heart broken.
Yeah, exactly.
And I get it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're the ones doing the fostering. I totally get it. So, and it's so funny how the end of the process, like, he's just like head over heels for the kid.
You got him in May, right?
Yeah.
And then when did you first start getting an idea that you might be able to adopt?
There were kind of inklings along the way. We heard from our first sessions actually with the child's attorney that he might be a unicorn baby, they said. And so that means just extremely rare. In foster care, kids aren't usually adopted before 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like a guaranteed long holdout process before there's even a possibility of you adopting them. So we're thinking, well, we're in this for the long haul. Let's go for it, man. Hail Mary, baby. Let's do this. So we adopted him when he was, between 10 and 11 months old. We kind of had we knew 6 to 7 months in, we knew it was happening. Wow. And then also it's like, we also don't understand how we haven't been through the process of like having a kid for 2 years and knowing how hard that is. And then, so anyways, we went from 0 kids to 1 and he's just life changes so
totally. Yeah.
fast.
So basically it was less than 9 months. You went from fostering to full on. Now you have a son.
Yeah. It was more like 10, but yep.
Yeah. 10 months.
It's it's crazy.
It is. It really is. That's why when I, go back to whatever a year ago and you were like, yeah, it'll work, Johnny, don't worry. And Peter knows something I don't. So,
and I didn't, but the man upstairs did.
Yeah, exactly.
So funny. Oh man.
So that's great. Yeah. So that's all you can say. It came from God, and just say thank you. And
yes.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah,
so,
thank you, Father, for sure. Yeah, last year was a big year. There was a lot of stuff that happened. Obviously work was great. We had the little guy, which was just amazing. We were going through a lot. Social workers are always coming and visiting, and then Department of Child Safety is always coming, and home studies, and they're making sure that your everything in your house is like double and triple locked, and smoke detectors work in every room, and the whole shebang. But yeah, and then got a hunt in last year, which was really fun, and just kind of like there's just been some restructuring in social life, I guess, a little bit too, which has been tough, but it's been really good too. So a lot of good changes, and I'm like really optimistic about the future. I think it's really bright.
Totally.
So
yeah. So we've talked about your company. We've talked about adoption. What else do you want to discuss? I mean, we can talk about the podcast and kind of what your thoughts are there, what some of the goals are, or anywhere else that you want to talk about.
So it's interesting when you're listening to the Rise Again podcast, you're usually listening to things that are lighting me up at any given time.
Right.
Kind of coming along on my journey of like what excites me, what's got me going, what am I thinking about, what's happening. So this last year I had a hunt, a bull elk hunt. So I'll probably have some hunters on archery. This is like get in there and do the deed with a bow and arrow kind of a deal.
Right.
Try to get some of them guys on. I do want to put a big emphasis on men's health as well for a little bit. So I'll probably have some more men's health providers, topics that relate to men that maybe men don't think about so much either.
There's some examples that you'd be willing to share. Maybe one that comes to mind.
Yeah. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is like prostate health, like guys, if you live long enough, the joke is you're going to get prostate cancer. Doesn't matter. If you live long enough, you'll get it. It's not usually what kills guys, but guys can die from it if it happens earlier. But so prostate health, and there's a lot of gray areas in it. Not all high PSAs are cancer and whatever else. So diagnostics, I'm going to bring in an expert that I have in my back pocket to talk about the prostate. But things I want to talk about, like I want to talk about joints, and I want to talk about like when do guys have injuries that are repairable without having surgery, and what needs surgery. I want to talk about our bodies as we wear out. I want to talk about eyes. I want to talk about oral health. I want to talk about ears. I actually want to take the person and deconstruct it a little bit, and then talk about how a man is different and what are the different things that we need to be thinking about as men.
Interesting.
That'll be fun. Guys are into health probably a lot more than you'd think.
And I think that even more so nowadays. I know there's I don't know, for the last 20 plus years now, there's been more and more emphasis on health and eating and knowing how food impacts health and sleep. We all hear about exercise, but those are other things. Stress, all of that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so the men's health stuff, I really want to put an emphasis on that. Yeah, I'm going to talk about hunting some. I'll probably talk to a couple guides probably too with fishing, hunting, having some specific questions there. I got into fly fishing a bit. That's been fun. Of course, I have a big emphasis on the nutrition side of things. I'm going to keep bringing some nutrition people in. My nutrition's changed a bit. I've added in a little bit of animal protein in from my hunts and whatever else. And that's been it's actually changed my blood a lot, my blood health, which has been really cool to see.
Yeah.
A living experiment, right? Experiment on myself. I like to do that. And so I talk about that specifically and how some of those changes have manifested and what I've done to get those changes. But then when you change something else changes on your body too. So it's like, well, there's a little bit of give and a little bit of take. So anyways, talk about nutrition. And then I want to talk about fostering and adoption a bit too. I have a lot of families that we've gotten to know that have gone through journeys.
Really intense stories. They're emotional stories.
It's a good word for it, intense. I mean, super intense stories. I mean, the backgrounds that these kids come from, like, I don't know if anybody listening, you just go to like the Children's Heart Gallery. You'll just see pages of kids that they're advertising for these kids to be adopted. I mean, there's so many kids out there.
Yeah, you've shared that with me, and I have gone to that website, and I've seen, I mean, literally there's pages of pages. It's almost like a high school yearbook of people's faces, and every one of them is asking to be adopted. They're asking, could I join your family? It's amazing. Yeah.
And these kids on this website, when people hear about private adoption, so this is stuff that we can talk about too, is private adoption is you go to an attorney, the attorney essentially kind of put your name out there. People come to the attorney saying like, hey, I want someone to adopt. And they look through your photo books and they choose your family to adopt their child. Okay. And you pay the attorney and the mom's attorney. And so it's a costly process. Well, these kids on the Arizona Heart Gallery, the state will pay for the adoption. There's no cost to you. And in fact, you actually would get a subsidy to adopt these kids for the rest of your life. You'd actually get a monthly stipend of whatever it is to be able to help take care of that child.
Interesting.
And they get health care for their whole, up till they're 18 years old, like the best health care you can get in the state. And it goes to any state they move to. So they get the best health care. The state will help you if you have the heart to reach out to take in one of these kids and to make them a part of your family. And their sibling groups. One child, 2 kids, 3 kids. I mean, how many do you want?
There's just a ton of really intense stories in that adoption circle. So we'd love to hear more about it. So kind of what I'm hearing from you is almost 3 different seasons per se of the Rise Again podcast, right? With emphasis for a while, maybe on hunting and fishing, talking to those people, those circles in terms of bow hunting, eating very lean, healthy animals, right? Taken from the wild, harvested correctly. That's a whole segment on that. Then there's a whole segment, if you'd like, which is kind of what you're implying, is on men's health, improving everything in terms of men's health. And then the last segment, which will be the real tearjerker, is going to be on adoption, fostering, and all the stories related to that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you for summarizing that because it's true. I have people lined up actually in all the different areas right now for interviews. And and these are families. The families are not used to sharing their stories really publicly. These fostering families and adoptive families.
No one's talking to them. The stories are not being told.
we have some really close friends who they've become very close friends.
Yeah.
Like we know each other, just because of this common bond that we have. What's interesting is they also lean heavily on faith and scripture and a lot of that too, because you need something greater than yourself
Right.
to undertake.
To believe in, right?
To believe in.
Yeah.
Yeah. To undertake a process like that, to go in and dive in and take somebody else's children and raise them as your own, take them into your family. We might even get on some people here to talk about, to dive into scriptures a little bit too. That would be nice on the podcast.
A biblical side of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to spice things up a little bit.
That'd be great. Yeah. There's a few guests that come to mind. And believe me, I'm not one of them. But
I think we'll get a round table. I think we'll get enough mics.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, fantastic. I think that's great. Is there anything else that you would like to share about the podcast, the life over the last year, the adoption, any of that?
I think things will come up through the next episodes, but I think this is good. Thank you, Johnny, for bringing this all up and helping me get a good introduction for the relaunch of the podcast out there. Just super excited that whoever's still tuning in. I mean, I looked on Libsyn just the other day and I was like, man, every month there's still all these hundreds and hundreds of listeners. And I'm like I've been gone for over a year, but the podcast episodes
still
live
there.
on.
Still out there. Yeah.
I didn't delete it.
No.
So
and they have, you've had very interesting guests with really interesting stories. So
yeah, there's been some thought-provoking ones for sure.
Absolutely. And people are still finding them. So, hey, I'm excited. Or finally, you're coming back. I'm happy just to be a part of this in the beginning. And you've been an inspiration for me. So in a lot of ways.
Welcome to the podcast space. Johnny's got his podcast. Why don't you just do a real brief drop on yours?
My podcast, it's launching this week, is called Life's Final Hour. And the purpose of the podcast is to interview people on their deathbed. Literally, they have 6 months or less to live. The goal with it is to help them share their final message with the world. I mean, literally, if you think about it, how many people are dying alone and or dying with stories that have never been told, things that they would want to share that haven't had the opportunity. And then also, I think there's life regrets. There's life joys that they can share. So I wanted to put a podcast together to help them share their final message with the world. And I think for us listeners, we can learn so much from that, right? Let's say we're struggling with a weight issue, or we've got a business that we've always wanted to start, but maybe have lacked the courage. Or maybe there's this certain individual, let's say you're in the dating stages, and you haven't had the courage to go and approach them, right? Well, I think someone literally on their deathbed telling you to just have courage and do those things, because they're coming up from the perspective of they have no time left. And you and I, the listener, we believe we still have time. So we can get, I think, crystal clear lessons from people that don't have time to apply in our own lives and make our own life be better. Yeah, that's a quick little summary of the Life's Final Hour podcast. Got the first interview going to be launching this week, and I'm looking forward to continue to get it out there.
Look in the show notes. I'll be sharing all that information so you guys can find Johnny's podcast. How impactful, guys. I mean, seriously, think about, how many people die with never being able to tell their story. When I think about what makes me relax and sit back into my chair is somebody telling me about their life. And what could be more sucking you into the present moment than someone saying, so I don't know if I'm going to be here next month.
Yeah, exactly. And just maybe even to share, some of the questions that I ask during this podcast is, tell us about what was your life's most proud moment? What was your saddest moment? What do you believe happens when you close your eyes to this world? You're getting some very, very unique, almost tear-jerking answers. This 91-year-old lady I just interviewed, just a beautiful, nice lady. I mean, her most proud moment was that she used the word birth. She said, birthing my 2 children. I thought that was really impactful for me. She had a very great life, had 2 husbands pass away on her. She's experienced death quite a bit, but her most proud moment was birthing her children. And I think that's important. I mean, that's her legacy living on. And again, if we won't go even to the biblical side, we've been directed by God to be fruitful and multiply. So that was interesting to hear that, her most proud moment. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, the vulnerability these people have, there's not much left to be hidden at this stage, right? And that's actually kind of a beauty in it. Like, you're not going to have these conversations with people that you meet at Starbucks.
No.
These are people who they're not leaving their home anymore. Most of them,
they're done.
Nurses coming to visit them.
And they know it. So they have crystal, I would say, clarity in terms of their life, some of the, maybe the regrets that they have, some of the things that they wish they could change, and so on and so forth. So Emma Lou was her name, 91 years old. And I asked her, my final question was, what is the final message that you want the world to know? And she said, love God, love each other, and be grateful always. And I was like, boom. Thank you, Emma Lou.
I mean, I'm looking at you right now and I'm like, wow. I mean, how can you summarize it into such a crystal clear message?
Thank you, Peter, for, I guess, giving an introduction here to the Life's Final Hour podcast. And hey, you and I, brothers, from different mothers.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to your journey with this and helping you in any way, with any connections or whatever you need. But I'm just excited to see how much you enjoy doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Johnny.
Hey, thank you, Peter.
All right.
We'll be doing these again.
Yeah, we will.
Right.
All right. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. As you guys learned, there's a new trajectory to the podcast. Yes, transformation is still a huge part of the podcast, but I definitely want to hit on areas that have been really impactful for me over the past couple of years. I do want to talk about something that I learned how to do, which is fly fishing. I really enjoy fly fishing. I love bow hunting. I've really gotten into using the bow as an amazing tool that it was made to be used for. I believe God put animals on this planet for us to use as a man of faith. And I believe that this past year's hunt up in the mountains here in Arizona and harvesting my first bull elk was certainly a very emotional experience for me. I learned a lot from it. And those that I was able to share that experience with, it was just a profound all-around experience. The new practice, Men's Revival, I want to talk about men's health, and I want to talk about how health impacts men differently than women in certain areas. So we're going to definitely have experts on from these various areas of health to talk about how these different things and their different fields and expertise and knowledge, like how health impacts men differently. So we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to bring on, of course, super inspirational people. So I definitely am going to keep that vibe going. I love that. I love these conversations. And I hope you guys do as well. So reach out to me, peterkraisanen@gmail.com. And you guys can let me know about any inspiring guests you'd love for me to get on the podcast. I have a connections network and I can reach out to people that you guys know. Of course, I always love it. If it's someone I don't know, if you can help connect me to that person as well, that'd be great. Hope you guys make it a great week and stay tuned for the next episode of the Rise Again podcast. Hey, thanks for listening to the Rise Again podcast. Great episode, hey? You know what? I really love interviewing people and I love getting people on who have things to share with the world. So if you have a really cool guest that you'd like to get on the podcast, email me and I will do my best to get them on the show. I hope you guys have a phenomenal week and stay tuned for the next episode of the Rise Again podcast.